even in his communication, if you watch how he did it, owning up an apology, putting in the energy, you could see whether he's a good leader or not, the effort is being there. Great leaders do this and they elevate that. And it's such an important aspect because.
Welcome to the Matt Phillips Podcast. I am Matt Phillips, your sales leadership coach, mental toughness expert, and founder of Matt Phillips Coaching. Welcome to today's podcast episode. It is Matt Phillips, and so excited, as I always am, to introduce you to a very special guest. And it's always, I love these things, right? Because when you never know who's going to cross your path and when they're going to cross your path. And I've probably said this on other guest interviews that I've had, but this one's pretty special. We connected, just a number of weeks ago and got set up. And I was on this gentleman's podcast just a little bit ago. And when you talk to someone, like you have to dig into their background and their expertise. Like I knew right away that I had to have Lou Diamond on the show. So in a minute, I'm going to introduce you to Lou. Welcome to the show. But before I do, let me tell you about the man, the myth, the legend that is Lou Diamond. Lou is an international keynote speaker, consultant, leadership and performance mentor. He is a best-selling author, a podcast and TV host. Can't wait to dig into that. And CEO of Thrive, a company that focuses on making the most amazing people, businesses, and brands become even more amazing through the power of connecting. We're going to spend a lot of time in that area today. Lou has over 25 years experience in sales, relationship management, business development, and executive mentoring, and inspires clients to feel they can conquer the world and make tons of great connections doing it. You can already tell why I connected with Lou right away, just about conquering the world and connecting with people. And so without further ado, Lou, welcome to the podcast.
Matt Phillips, truly honored to be here. And I realized between Matt Phillips and Lou Diamond, with your former baseball background, we would be like an all-star infield, I think. I think that would be like a second base shortstop combination. Like those are good, solid baseball names. Yours better than mine, but yes.
They truly, the baseball diamond. I mean, come on, you cannot beat that, right? And we were talking on your podcast just a bit ago that, you had asked my favorite movie, and of course, being a baseball guy, I mean, it all ties together, right? My favorite Field of Dreams, if those of you haven't watched it, I mean, it's all baseball related here. So super excited to have you on. And what do you got there?
I even have a baseball here. So last year, we lost a legend, the great Brooks Robinson, and this was a signed baseball from him. And this is literally supposed to be delivered. I know you're in Colorado. We're going to try and do this osmosively. My very good friend who I got this for, it says to Scott, is a big Orioles fan, obviously a fan of Brooks Robinson.
Yes.
And he's in Boulder. You're not too far. I'm going to throw the baseball through the camera, through the streaming, and hopefully it gets to him, but I really have to hand deliver this to him. But we found there's a little baseball reference for you. Oh,
I love it. And that's what I love too, is like when you look at the old timers, if you will, right? The legends of the game. I mean, there's such wisdom that they left and the way they approached the game the right way. And Brooks, with the adversity he had to fight through as well, right?
Yeah.
To even make it to the major leagues and just deal with what a lot of us don't have to deal with every day. It's pretty darn amazing.
Anyway, but I didn't want to give you off track. I just had the whole baseball analogy going on here.
Well, no, I love it. I love it. Yeah, we're gonna divert and just talk about baseball this whole podcast. Darn it. But let's, I always love to start these podcasts with this question that I'm going to ask. And who's one of the greatest leaders that you've worked for, interacted with, and how has he or she influenced how you lead today, how you show up today?
It's so funny. And he prompted me, listeners, that this would be the question. And my head was spinning because there have been so many great leaders, but I'll make it real simple and sentimental within it. I would argue that the skills that I've learned have come directly from having to work for my father. In a very small retail jewelry store just out in the boroughs of New York City. And to watch him, how his incredible connecting personality with both customers and the people that worked for him, his ability to immediately connect with customers when they came in to buy something, but also his management style, his organization, the way that he thought about, expansion and growth and stuff like that. I've never thought of it that way. And he had some wins and losses just like anybody else. But obviously it's part of my DNA. So I would have to say that's where it all began and where I've obviously amplified it in certain ways and taken things from him and taken other great lessons from so many other great leaders I got a chance to work with. I'm going to give one other shout out here to my buddy Joe Anderson, who worked on Wall Street, who was the most hands-off leader ever and only stepped in and provided things when key messages needed to be delivered, but was a great way of showing that you can lead without being overbearing. You can give certain skills to empower people to do things. And I think that's such an important part of great leaders out there. So there's many more and other inspiring folks as well. But those were two people there. Look at that. Joe cracked the right next to dad list. He'll hear this and be like, you're kidding. You didn't do this. Yeah.
Take it back, Lou.
Yeah.
I think those are two great examples. And the thing, I want to dive into both of those because I think they're so critical. I had a conversation yesterday with someone actually on your second example of the way that people lead, and the individual I was speaking with talked about the massive amount of micromanagement that was occurring by the boss. And this happened to be a founder of a company, but massive micromanaging, right? To the point of like, he had a meeting and this boss will look up on LinkedIn who the meeting was with to figure out if it was a good use of time, right? And I think that's something we fight. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you got to be kidding me. But it's all about like that trust component, right? Of this is what we're trying to build. And I think through your dad of connecting, that was building trust. Through what your friend talked about too, that was building trust with his team. And I think that's such a critical concept in business today.
Yeah.
What do you think, like when you look back at your dad too, because I want to talk about this connectedness piece, right? And we're going to dive into your Speakeasy book and things like that. But it's having conversations that lead to great connections. As you look back, and how did your dad, when someone walked in, because I think a lot of times it's not misperceived. We think people have this like unbelievable, like natural gift of conversationalist connectedness. It's like this, are you born with it or is it developed?
Yeah.
But what did your dad do, maybe specific before we dive into that, to, I don't know, like what was different where he was able to engage? Was it just his curiosity? Like, what was it that made that?
Definitely components of all of those things. And it's really interesting because it is what I dug into tremendously in Speakeasy and trying to help people connect with every conversation, because I think this is at the root of what I learned is when you try to drill down with every relationship you've ever had, whether in personal or in business in your life, every connection you've ever had began with a really good conversation. That's what happened. Yet we all know we don't always have a really good conversation with someone. Right. We don't connect. Yes. We interview for the job and we don't get hired. We go on a first date, but it doesn't turn into a second date.
Yes.
We try to communicate to our team certain messages and things get lost. And a lot of times I was fascinated by this because I've always been a big conversationalist. I know you wanted to discuss a lot. Obviously, we're both in the podcast universe, so we have a lot of conversations. The skills that you can have in this role are some of the things that you can bring to the table, whether you're a leader, a salesperson, a marketer. Bring those communication skills out in not necessarily what you need to say or what you need to do, but what I learned from my dad and what I've tried to emulate and help educate thousands of others through the message that I deliver. It's how you need to be in every one of these circumstances. It's a state of being that makes you ready for that conversation and more likely to connect with that person to have more conversations. You asked about curiosity. You mentioned, is it something that, yes, it's absolutely one of the being curious is one of the 6 key ways, which I won't go into on your program here. We could have people check out the book or check out some of the stuff I speak about. But being curious is one of the strongest ways that we connect because we're trying to bring our worlds together. Yes. And we want to see into someone else's world. A customer walks into the store. Why are they there? Someone in your life and business that you have a pitch with, you have services that you may be able to help them with, but we don't actually know where their biggest problems are. Someone is coming to work for an organization and you're looking to interview, but you're not 100% sure exactly what skills they're looking for right now. All of these things need you to tap into being curious and understanding that component of it. I love asking questions. It's why I love hosting podcast shows, and I love doing, sitting on the other side of the mic too, to provide these answers, because it is the questions that start the conversations, that build the relationships with the people you do business with.
Yes.
And I think I learned that at a very early age. It wasn't just like, how are you doing today, when a customer walked in and my dad talked to them. I think it was really trying to understand a little about them in a very open way and very friendly way. Likability, it's something we'll talk about towards the end of our conversation here, about someone I've partnered with the work I'm doing now.
Yes.
It's so important to be likable when you're trying to connect and have a conversation with somebody, because we kind of want to like the person we're talking to, right? We kind of want to like the people we do business with. If we had a choice, we would love that, right? So is there a way to be likable? To your point about, is sales something that you're either born with or you just kind of have, or that ability to just open up a conversation and talk with anyone, talk to a plant or whatever it might be? Right. A long time ago, I did a little analysis. I don't necessarily know if you're born with the ability to sell. What I do know is that the ability to connect, and specifically connect in every conversation, because that's where it begins, can be coached. Yes. And I think that is more important than worried if you can sell and move things down the line and all that. There's lots of philosophies, the Challenger sales method, Sandler sales, all these different ways that are really, really helpful. In my line of work, I recognize all of that is important. But what's much more important is understanding how you have to have the thing that you need at the very beginning, that important conversation, the connecting conversation, and how you need to be, which I like to say is how you need to speak easy.
Yes. Well, and I love this, my wife, she'll comment every once in a while that she's like, you're really good at small talk. And it's that connectedness, right? I mean, it's connectedness. And I always kind of respond with, it's not necessarily that I have some skill that other people don't have. It's just in my head, I'm always thinking of like, what's the next question I want to ask? Yeah. And not that I need to ask, because with need comes pressure, I believe, but I want to ask this because I'm genuinely I'm curious about it. Right. When you do come to Boulder and deliver the ball, like maybe I'll figure out where you're doing it and I'll intercept it and take the ball. But, but I think it's that curiosity that I've learned over time of just like come up with a list of questions or something. But are there any tips or tricks that you share with people to if they're overwhelmed by going in and just, they don't know if they're curious or they don't know what questions to ask or whatever, how to do that you kind of coach and teach?
So the answer to this question is yes, but I want to give an important background that I think will help your listeners. I think a lot of times people don't know how to approach an individual in an open networking situation, or the first time you're going to meet someone. And you could even take this to a social piece, right? Let's say you're being introduced, you're at a party and you're interested in meeting someone that you might be romantically interested or whatever it might be. You don't know how to get things started. And, people have, there's lines or quick things to open things up. And you could show a little bit of your personality, which is important, by the way. You have to kind of be you in all these moments. But I like to visualize what connecting looks like, because we know what connecting feels like. When you have a great conversation with somebody, it feels almost like it's kind of a high. It's like I am bonding with somebody through the words. We're talking about our similar interests or dissimilar interests, and we're connecting on a certain point.
Yes.
And there's a feeling that you have, and you know what it is, and you can't quite describe it. Well, I actually tried to say, well, what does it look like? Because if you could visually describe it, would be really cool. And for the viewers who are watching your video, we'll show it. For the people who are listening, let's just say one circle is your world. This is the world that you live in, and everything you know within your world. And these are all the things that embody you: your job, your family, your children, the school you went to, the things you love to do, the things you don't like to do, where you're from, all the things that embody who you are. And if you think about them inside of your circle and your world as little clouds or little orbs that are the assets that make up who you are. you know what they look like because you know them well. And the more that you have of these things, your world actually almost becomes a bigger piece of you, right? And you could almost visually see it. And by the way, when I see people, this is how I see people. Oh, I'm forever going to joke about this. If for those who've seen the video of Matt's background, he has the "Just Keep Going" sign behind him, and I will never forget it. It's right behind him over there, and all of his sports stuff. And I see that when I see him, or I'll remember he was just on my podcast, and we produced a piece of video content that will always circulate. This stuff is how we resonate. And make it clear, you see someone that you haven't seen in a long time, but maybe you saw recently in social media, they hit a milestone event. They had a child, they had a grandchild, their kid got into college, or they just got a new job, whatever it might be, right? These are the things that your brain kind of processes. When you see someone you don't know and you know nothing about, it looks like a person with a world, but you can't see inside of it. And you kind of want to know what's in there.
Yes.
And depending on your circumstance and where you are in that moment, it could be as simple as maybe they're at a conference and they're wearing a badge that says they work at a certain company. Well, the minute you see that, you're already feeling, oh, they work at company XYZ.
Yes.
And maybe I know somebody at company XYZ. Maybe in my world, I know that person that's there. And what you're trying to do is, through great question asking or just introduction, learning about that person or their circumstances, is to try to see in their world. Yes. And to use this term effectively, when you get to worlds close together like this and they're just touching, that's like networking, right? You're not seeing into their world and they're not seeing into yours. And that's not a connection. That's just, meeting people or getting people in there. I would even argue, when you see in some of the social media handles, Matt, you have this many connections. I would argue you have this many contacts in your life because you've literally contacted with that person.
So true.
But a connection is when you've started to delve into that conversation and you start to see into their world and your worlds overlap. And in that overlap, you're actually taking a piece of their world and they're stepping into your world and you're stepping into theirs. And I think this is important. It's about the relationship. It is not about making it all about them or them making it all about you. You need to swap to connect here, and you have to bring those worlds together. And what happens when you bring those worlds together? When you do, whether you knew it or not, you took a piece of their world and they took a piece of yours, and it added to their world, and your world, whether you knew it or not, got bigger. It grew. You learned something. You grew.
Yes.
And guess what? When that little new, fresh piece of your world has been added, either you want to continue to have the conversation to add more to it, or maybe even bring another connection in there where you've made that connection in there, because now you'll be forever connected in these loops of worlds and orbs that are around you. Imagine a whole world of all these connected circles.
Yes.
That's what a great connected world is. And by the way, we work faster, we operate quicker, we're able to get resources done faster. And that all started with a really good conversation. Whatever the opening might be, there is no standard one.
Right.
There's lots of fun things. I've seen people do really cool ways to introduce themselves. It's like, I'm Lou. I'm originally from New York. I now live in Florida, and I kind of like country music. And I know that's weird. Something of that nature, right? Something, who I am, what I'm really about, and then something that nobody knows about you. That's actually a wonderful way to icebreak it. Or this one woman I used to work with, she was great. She was from California. She studied at Duke University, and she is studying to be a sushi chef. By the way, I think she is a sushi chef now. And I remembered she would tell people this. And then she would follow up by saying, right now, I'm obsessed with knives. And all of a sudden, you're going to get a hold, what is this all about? Imagine just having the ability to have that open conversation in any light. And it doesn't need to be limited to those personal type of things, conversations. This could be a business conversation. I've done this with groups, because the more we have conversations with people we work with, work for, try to bring in, or we're trying to work with and for in a sales situation, the more conversations we need to have to increase the likelihood that we're growing these connections to be a client for not just one sale. Right. We want them for a long-term relationship, for many sales. Important things for your listeners on this program is that those conversations that you have are what going to fill your pipeline. And the more you have, the more that you increase the likelihood that those connected conversations turn into the business relationships you want.
Yeah. And I love this. I love this conversation, obviously, because, when some people can be uncomfortable, like with the openings and all these sorts of things. And I think one thing I've told people is that helps me at least is, whenever I make things about me, that's when I get in trouble. And that's with coaching people. That's with opening a conversation. That's with me trying to make a sale, stuff like that. When I make it about me, that's when I struggle, because then I'm like, oh, I'm focused on internally instead of how am I asking the right questions? Am I connecting? Am I finding out even if I'm a fit for this company? Like, do they have a problem I can solve? And sometimes it's like, no, like it's not going to happen. Right. And so it's shifting out there. And then I always go into it too, if this is helpful for listeners too, if I just make a list, and it may sound ridiculous, but like make a list of questions, or you can look at their background, you can look at LinkedIn, you can do all this stuff, but I just make a list of questions that I could ask if I'm sitting in that room.
Yep.
And then I struggle with names. I don't know if you do as well, Lou. I
Yes.
struggle. I'm horrible with remembering names. Yet I remember very specific details about their world.
That's a perfect way to yeah.
It's so interesting when I look at it. If I know now that you will be delivering this Brooks Robinson. I know I keep going back to the baseball, but I know you're delivering that to Boulder to a friend at some point, right? And I'll probably never forget that. And
by the way, I've forgotten it, which is causing me a lot of problems that I haven't given him this baseball yet. But yes, if you didn't forget it, you called to remind me. I'm going to make sure I'm on it.
Right. And it's so interesting, but I think that's where, again, I'm just curious more about their world, which I need to work on, like the name thing too, right? Of course. And associations and all these tips and tricks and things like that. But I find it really, really interesting when you're curious, like, just makes the conversation so much like easier, more powerful, things like that.
Yeah. And a good tip, and I'm not good with names either. And a lot of that has to do with it. Nobody forgets my name. With a name like Lou Diamond, and needless to say, with an actor, Lou Diamond Phillips, I mean, I'm never going to beat him on the Google search. Let's just call it, because 2/3 of his name is mine. And it's part of a challenge that I have. But what I will tell you is that when I meet people now, and I learned this a lot from doing a lot of interviewing and podcasting. And to your point, there's a whole section in Speakeasy about learning from some of the greatest interviewers of all time. I happen to feature 3 of them: Oprah Winfrey, Howard Stern, and Larry King. And they all have unique pieces about it. We don't talk into knowing their names, but one thing that I have listened to and observed is repeating somebody's name, Matt. That every time you do it, the more you do that, because it will help you that way. I'll repeat somebody's name when I hear it the first time, and I'll say it back. A lot of people do things like, they'll say my name like Lou Diamond Phillips, or they'll roll it off, whatever helps them to remember. And it is difficult because you're right. We're focused on trying to know something about what's in their world, which actually is more important than their name. I don't want to minimize what their name is, except for the fact that I think you know this, the most aesthetically sounding thing you can hear in the world is your name. So when your name is said, because it started when you were a little kid and they were goo goo gaga with you, dropping your name. Oh, hello, little Matty, little Matt, right?
Yes.
When you were a kid, from your parents and from other people, it was always smiles, and it brings it to you that way. That is still true today. When you hear your name, you react. So it is something that you should work on encouraging and try to do it. And yes, it is hard, because the more people you meet in this world, the harder it is to remember everybody's name. But staying connected and having lots of conversations certainly helps.
I wanted to take a quick break from the podcast to invite you to something very special that we're up to at Matt Phillips Coaching. It's what we call the High Performance Leadership Program. Now, we know that leading people can be challenging. It also can be extremely rewarding. And one thing that I found as you progress in leadership and want to take that next level, get that promotion, continue to move up the ladder, is you have to continually invest in yourself. And you have to set yourselves apart from other people. And you have to continue to not only grow as a leader, but you have to grow your mental toughness, your mindset, because that is the one true differentiator. That's exactly why we built the High Performance Leadership Program, to come alongside you on a monthly basis, to give you the tools, training, and resources, and coaching with me to help you elevate your performance. So I invite you to head over to mattphillipscoaching.com/membership and join us today in the High Performance Leadership Program. Let's make your dreams and your career and your business a reality. Yes, it's so true. Well, so on this note of, in your book, the Speak Easy, you talk about these best kept secrets of interviews, conversationalists, and you mentioned Oprah and some others as well. what are, like, repeating name? That's, I think, a great way to connect, and it brings them back, and we're connected, and I care about you, and I'm going to say your name and all these sorts of things. What's like one other or two other like secrets that you talk about in the book that are like our listeners can kind of pull from or leverage when they're just building, again, that connected relationship with people?
So the expression I love to say is that you want to show up when you have a conversation with someone. And I intentionally elevated the word up as I said that, because I want you to show up. And this is a lesson indirectly learned from Larry King. Larry King, by the way, has interviewed more people on live television than any human in the world. It's in the tens of thousands of live interviews that he did. There was, I don't know, he passed away and his show ended somewhere around 2010, but whatever time it was, there was nobody that had more interviews and conversation. Often, the first time he was ever meeting that individual was on the show right then and there. And you can go watch him and make it clear he was a chain smoker and he was married. I don't know. He was a chain marriage person getting married. I mean, obviously, man went through a lot of divorces and a lot of weddings. While those aspects of his life I couldn't relate to, what I could relate to is that when the red light went on for the camera, a switch went off in him to elevate the energy in that conversation, to elevate the move, to show up, to basically be like, that light's on. I got to show up right now. I am on. And Oprah Winfrey does that too, by the way. She would penetrate through the camera with her intensity. This is something that she always would do. But that show up feature is important because I think it's important to recognize to connect with someone through a conversation requires you to elevate the energy. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to connect with a dud. Let's call it what it is, Matt.
Yes.
You need to have a little bit of a pulse. Yes. You need to elevate yourself. And to those introverts listening, or those people who are a little more quiet, that is okay. By the way, I've connected with many people on their introvertedness and their unique being shy or quiet. But still, to connect with another individual, you're going to have to elevate yourself. And even if it's just one pulse above, one notch on the volume from 1 to 2, as opposed to like what I'm normally like a 9 to 11. I'm definitely a Spinal Tap type of guy. But it's important just elevating it a little bit to meet someone, showing an energy, giving a smile, connecting with someone and just being glad to see them, a firm handshake or even a nod or a bow, whatever your culture might be, in a certain way that elevates who you are. It is the energy to show up that we actually will recognize, because to penetrate through that wall and to connect and see into someone else's world is not a latent task. It is something that will require you to get through and require you to connect. And showing up is key.
That's so good. I always tell people, like, one of the secrets of leadership that is so simple is just show up with more energy than the person across from you, next to you, on the Zoom from you, because people feed off that energy, right? And so when you elevate, automatically people will typically mirror you, and they will bring their energy up as well. And that leads to a better conversation, a better process flow, diagram that you're, whiteboarding, or idea session you're having, is people want to elevate, and they will follow. That's what people like. You're called a leader for a reason, that people will follow. And energy is the simplest, I will agree 100%, simplest way to let you go, they go.
Yeah.
And if you go up, they go up. If you go down, they go down.
And which, by the way, is something that I think most people forget about great leaders, great communicators, this is a lot of responsibility. And let's speak to those, whether you're a leader in your sales organization, you're a leader of an organization, a company, an entrepreneur, you are running marketing, and you're trying to be responsible for connecting your message and your voice of your brand, your company, your business to somebody else. The leadership role is hard, and there's a lot of responsibility. We're recording this on a day that yesterday we were just learning about the Boeing CEO had to come out and talk about all of the problems that this MAX plane is happening. I have now listed which airlines I will not be flying in the near future.
Right.
I feel for you because there's a lot of United planes by you. But anyway,
yes.
Even in his communication, if you watch how he did it, owning up an apology, putting in the energy, you could see whether he's a good leader or not, the effort is being there. Great leaders do this, and they elevate that. And it's such an important aspect because when you don't, and you have to ride the sorrows when there's tragic things happen, you may have to start down at that low when you've lost a person that works at the company,
Yes.
or you didn't win the deal that
Yes.
you were pitching for. But that doesn't mean the game's over. There's lots of things to take emotion and ride it in a certain way. So channeling it in the right way in the conversations you have is a real art form, not a set skill that you're going to learn. It's something you have to practice.
Yes.
And you don't have to be the senior person in an organization to do that. You can be the most junior person, and just elevating your conversations, I say this specifically, can elevate your career. So bring that energy, but lift it up. And even if just that one notch, as we talked about before, so vital.
That's so huge. And I love the aspect too of, it doesn't matter what level you are at in an organization, we have that is one of the controllables that we have. And so there may be lots outside your control, but that controllable piece is the energy you bring. And you don't have to necessarily match, if you don't want to, the low energy of your leaders. You can be different. And that stands out, to your point. That stands out completely.
Excellent.
Oh, love that. Okay. So many questions.
That's what's great. Listeners listening here, I always joke about this. This is what I like about Matt here, and talk about his forthright honesty. As a coach, you ask great questions. That's what coach does. And he's a phenomenal coach and a great podcast host. And I'm sure you listen to his program and you're taking this in. What I always love is the off the cuff, like you're reacting to everything that's going on and trying to figure out, what do I need to bring to this recipe of this concoction for this episode. Yes. And that's what gets me the most excited, why I love this medium so much. Anyone who comes with these planned set scripts, that ain't going to work for me. I need the let's mix it all together and figure out what tastes great.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The best podcasts, the best interviews, the best conversations, the best connections happen when you are open and, again, curious, and wherever the conversation takes you, there's a purpose to it, right? There's clearly a purpose to, I've got, when I approach things, it's the same as you, is that there's an end goal in mind, right? Yeah. There's a result that we want. And for me on a podcast, I always start with, like, what do the listeners need to hear? And how do we, what questions do I need to ask Lou so that they can maybe change their behavior or optimize their performance and do sorts of things? So that's always where I start. I'm already there of how do I, what do I need to ask Lou now to help optimize the performance of the people listening? Because that's all that matters. And I know you have the nuggets and things like that. And I think that's why I love these conversations, because your interviews do this too sometimes, I'm sure, but where it starts versus where it ends up is
the roadmap is certainly not well defined. I've had a couple that have, wow, I did not see that coming, or know where it was going, and those are the best ones. And I think that's I made the comment about tasting great. I'll use an analogy to like a great wine. A great conversation is like that wine that you taste. There's so many things going on in the conversation that tempt your taste buds.
Yes.
But at the overall experience of the whole thing, to your point, is you're tasting something that just is great. Yes. And yes. I think that's what a good conversation should be like. And that's kind of why we have the speakeasy analogy, obviously, for almost one of those old time bars and cities from long ago, and those secret places that we want to let everybody in, because we want to let everyone have a chance to understand what these special, cool places are like.
Yes. And I'll be in New Orleans here in 2 weeks. So,
oh yeah, a lot of them there.
So we'll see. It'll be interesting. Okay. So let's talk about the connectedness, if I can speak, of leaders specifically, because that's a huge passion. I mean, conversation's part of it, building those relationships, making those great connections. And I want to talk about it from a leadership perspective, because I think there's leaders externally, right? Of when we're trying to connect from a sales perspective, specifically with prospects, clients, all those sorts of things. And those people we're trying to connect with, but also internally, right? I look at leadership that it's both external and internal. And so talk to me a little bit about your perspective on what is a connected leader, and how do we can dive into how to continue to evolve that, grow that, develop that with our team, externally, internally.
Yeah. And this is my current initiative for 24, which will lead to, I guess, I'll have a chance to plug at the end of our segment here.
Yes.
The importance of this connected leader. If you think about the importance of great leaders, as we've addressed, and from the opening of the show, people that mean the importance, what are those qualities that we like of those leaders? and you've been hearing about the importance of connecting with every conversation, in pairing that together, the future of great organizations that thrive through connecting are being led and being filled with connected leaders. People that understand the essence and importance and the tactics of being connected to another individual, how they need to be to go do it, and how they could ongoingly deploy it, to your point, externally for representing the organization, and maybe more importantly, how you increase those important connected conversations inside your organization and build a culture of fellow connected leaders. My connecting sister from another Mr. Michelle Letterman, she and I for years have been separately having this connected message. She's written 4 books, including one of the ones I mentioned, The Laws of Likability, very difficult to say, and a lot of other connection books. And I've written Speakeasy and The Master of the Art of Connecting. And we went for a walk last year and recognized we got to bring our Wonder Twin powers together, because there's a couple of things that a lot of organizations are missing. Not every organization has that high-level coaching that will really help people become a better leader. Make it clear, the best organizations and the best leaders have the best coaches. Matt, as a former athlete, a professional athlete as yourself, coaching only gets more important at every tier you move up. Someone had made the comment, what does coaching mean to LeBron James or Michael Jordan when he was at his peak? It means everything. I mean, literally their mindset, their attitude, the ongoing maintenance of your physicality, and having the right coaching and making the right connections where needed. Well, in business today, leaders need that. Not everyone has access to that.
Correct.
And if they did, how great that would be. And if they also knew the powers of connection. Jump in.
I think real quick, pardon me for interrupting there, but I think this is the critical piece, right? As you move up in organizations, it becomes more competitive. You have more impact, these things like that. So when you look at a professional athlete, they are looking for the 1%. Because that 1% is vastly significant. Like, they've already got the 99, but they need the 1% to increase their career length, to score more points, to score more runs, to be a better hitter, like whatever, but they're looking for that extra little 1%. I think as you move up in an organization too, that's what you're looking for, of like, what's that one little optimization? So I just wanted to play off that a little bit and not interrupt you, but that's what coaching does. It's like, that's why I have coaches. I have 2 coaches I use, and I'm looking for the little 1% that can make all the difference in the world. So I think that's important as you move up in organizations, especially.
It's important in every stage of your career. And I think, due to time, due to busyness, and let's not, in large organizations, there are well built out programs and coaching development. And as you get to certain tiers, here's the unfortunate part. They're providing a lot of that executive level coaching to the people who've already kind of made it at that level, or needing it, that other piece, because they don't want to take the risk in some cases in getting it in the lower tiers, and then they don't have the infrastructure to handle it.
Yes.
Well, so with that, paired with the fact that both Michelle and I have recognized that this power of understanding connection and how to utilize it and how to master it is something that not everyone knows.
Yes.
So we were saying no to a lot of people and being able to help them with the work that we do, and recognized we're tired of saying no. We don't like saying no, because we love to connect with all these different people. So we created this program called the Connected Leader Club. It's actually a course. That's your first entrance into it, so that you can be level set and understand how to become a connected leader.
Yes.
And then you become part of this Connected Leader Club, which is an ongoing effort of bringing these great connected leaders throughout. And we are opening it up to, people who have already kind of made it. They have a certain tenure of experience, but they don't have the access to it in a lot of the places that you think that they would, or their organizations don't provide it, or they don't provide enough of it.
Yes.
And we wanted to open the doors to give this bit, because we've been giving this message on stages or in workshops for lots of companies for several years, and recognize, let's bring this all together and create this community of incredible connected leaders, because these are the people that make a difference.
Yes.
So to your question, how important is connected leader today? A connected leader, and what do they look like? They understand the importance of creating a culture inside with open communication, a level of transparency, a level of accountability, a level of ongoing coaching and partnership, and using benefits across the organization through great conversations that they need to continue to cherish and grow. They need to be open. They need to be curious constantly. To your micromanaging example of some leader who is way too in the weeds.
Yes.
When you're way too in the weeds, you're not enabling yourself to be open to see the whole farm, right?
Okay.
You need to understand what the weather patterns are, what's coming down the road, where are we in the seasonality of everything. I'm using my farmer analogy. Man, have I jumped all over the analogy bandwagon today?
Love it.
But that's exactly how we have to think. And so for those that when you start to go too deep only in one particular lane, you're missing out on having more conversations with those in the other lanes, in the other areas. So trying to figure out a system or an organization that gets you out of the weeds, empowers the people to be the leader they need to be.
Yes.
And then you're having the conversations at a much higher level, a much more productive level, than having to worry about the fine minutia that you used to do maybe a long time ago, or you may have done better. And make it clear, if you've elevated your career to create something and moved up a tier, you did something right in one area.
Yes.
You may need help to get there in the next. And that's what great connected leaders do, is they know where their strengths are and they surround themselves with the other people who are also connected in that same way. So this is the future of where we see things are key.
Yes.
And that's why we created the Connected Leader Club. I know I front run the plug section here, but
no, I love it. We'll put, links in the show notes to those interested, because I think it's critical, right? Of, I'm just a believer, the more conversations, the better.
Yep.
And one area that, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, right? I'm actually, people don't realize this, I'm one of those introverted extroverts, meaning when I do a speech, for example, I love giving speeches. When I'm done, and after I've taught the people things like that, I need a break. So I need about 30 minutes by myself to process, to get my energy back, because I'm expending a tremendous amount of energy on the stage, things like that, right? And even in coaching, things like that, I need time just to sit and be by myself and be quiet, because that's what sometimes introverts like, and that's okay. But knowing that about myself, it's also, I know the importance of going out and talking. And I wanted your opinion on this. Again, do you believe, what's more important? Let me phrase this the right way. What's more important in your mind, like gathering information to stay connected with your people via a survey that a company sends out, because I see that a lot, or through conversation, or a combination thereof? What's your opinion on that? I think I see this a lot.
So the latter is more effective, except for the fact that it might not be the most efficient.
Yes.
Right. And that is a sense of, if you have a lot of people in your organization, how can you create the forum to be able to do this? And this is why there is nothing more valuable in the growth of when you're working on your business to have that offsite, executive offsite, leadership offsite, to have the conversations with everybody to filter out what goes there. Now, if you have a very large organization and you have parts of that you can do,
yes,
you may also need other voices, and surveys are a very effective way to gather a lot of data points, which are concrete and really well thought out. I think of the surveys are very effective. But to make it clear, to create the culture to create a connected culture within your organization, where you are encouraging people and fostering people to have more conversations so they can speak easy in everything they do, you need to have at least a combination of the two you just suggested. There has to be levels of conversation happening directly and providing other raw data. And I think that's a good combination that every organization should do. Don't just look at the raw data on its own and say, well, it looks like that more people skewed this way, and not have a conversation about it, just react. It's important to take that piece of data and then understand and help to prioritize, help to see where people are. Using the example of looking into everybody's world, remember, the goal is to have more conversations, to create those great connections so that our worlds can grow.
Yes.
And we can bring them all looped in together. If it's your organization, you're trying to bring in all those different pieces, you need to have the conversations to loop in all those worlds together so that you're all working in sync, working more efficiently, more effectively. And I want to put this importantly, being happy and enjoying with what you're doing.
Yes.
So
Amen.
I know that gets lost in this. I'm just remembering a little side note. I played golf a few weeks ago with someone who is one of the most respected defense attorneys in New York City, or was, and incredibly successful, unbelievably, financially well, one of the best, records within courts, and completely miserable when he was doing it. And he stopped doing it, and I was doing a lot of other enjoyable things. And what I will tell you is your great performance doesn't necessarily always isn't always going to generate the thing that makes you happy. You may be really good at something. You may be really good at making money or certain things like this, but I want to make important that today it is way more important between your ears to be happy for a certain amount of time and enjoying it than all the things that used to be perceived as the most important things. I think this is becoming more and more evident.
Yes.
I can't begin to tell you how we need to get to that place where we're there more often, and knowing what that is in your organization. And even as a great leader, knowing what it is not making somebody happy and what can be done about it, or what is it? Is it about the area they're working in? Is it the team they're working on, or the situation, or the project, or even the client?
Yes.
Best story I've ever heard about this very successful consulting company, small niche group. The thing that they had is, if the client made them very unhappy because they were just overbearing or over demanding or whatever it was, they questioned whether they would ever bring in certain clients. So they actually have a happiness test that they have for the prospective clients. And they have a conversation with those that had pitched them and saying, will this organization that we potentially could bring in that will pay us money, will they be part of our formula of keeping a happy, connected organization? And make it clear. Sometimes yes, and sometimes and you don't know right away, but sometimes when you learn it, certain factors you become really good at, they're demanding certain things. They're only talking about themselves. They're not willing to open up like a great connected person. Is that the person you want to make a connection with?
Yes.
Is that going to help your organization grow? You have permission at that point to be a little selfish, to say, what is this we know what we could do for their world. What can they do for ours?
Yes.
And the more you understand that there's something symbiotic, and that's the group you want to work with, great. And the ones you realize that you're not going to break that barrier and that wall, bounce off and go fish elsewhere.
So well said. So well said. It's end of the day, it's back to energy, right? Are we putting ourselves in a place where we show up with energy and show up and receive the energy back too? Because it's the flow, right? The good and bad, the yin and yang. It's like we have to create this environment where we are happy and we can work really hard. And sometimes that means working a lot. Sometimes that means not working very much, but opening from that place, I think, is so critical. And it's, I've got one last question, and we'll see where people can connect with you here in a minute. And we could spend hours on this and just being cognizant of your time. But you reminded me of when talking about like kind of the survey, the question I asked survey versus, having the conversations, things like that. I worked for a Fortune 500 company a long time ago, and the CEO was kind of famous for just showing up like in your doorway. And it would freak you out, right? Because you're talking to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and he has a massive background with these even bigger companies than that company I was working for at the time. And he just show up and like, and you're like, whoa. And then he'd be like, hey, how's it going? Like, how's your day? What are you working on? And there was no, hidden agenda. Mm-hmm. It was just a guy trying to get to know the people and just having a 5-minute conversation just to connect. Yeah. And people don't realize how powerful that is, where you were freaked out the first time, but then you kind of wanted it. You're like, I hope he shows up again one of these days.
That's you just reminded me of, and I don't know if he's still the current CEO, but he's certainly the head of Costco, would literally just show up at one of the Costco's, literally fly to a certain location. Supposedly, talk about maybe a little micromanaging. He would start moving stuff, from this is better position or whatever it might be.
Pallet jack starts moving product around.
But the organization got so excited when he was going to it, to a really well orchestrated brand for those who were Costco shoppers or Kirkland purchasers, their own labeled brand. This is one of the most amazing stories, and really created a sense of community, not just with customers, but with the employees that love to work at that organization. So that being just showing up. I mean, showing up at your door outside your office or showing up at your store, whatever the surprise may be, great things happen when that is there. And to your point, being eagerly excited to know that you have the opportunity to connect with that individual or team of individuals is such a wonderful way to keep things in there. I mean, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Mr. Zuckerberg, but Mark does that a lot too. At Facebook, he'll get involved in like grassroots projects with some of the younger stuff and building coding projects or competitions and things. And I think that's been something that has continued to build a unique culture there. And every place, and you have to, and whether it's for you or not, have the conversation to find out is an important thing. Those are great questions to ask for those who are exploring about, do I want to be in an organization like that? Does it fit all of the places there? Because that's going to make you also be that much more productive and valuable when you're there as well, knowing all the things that connect with your world as you do.
Yes, so true. So on that note, Lou, how can people best connect with you? Yeah.
So everywhere on social media or on the web, it's thriveloud.com or at thriveloud, THRIVELOUD. And as I mentioned earlier, we are launching right as we speak. If you go there right now, you'll see it's coming soon. And please go there. We are starting our initial cohorts for the Connected Leader Club, where you would enroll in the Connected Leader course to start to earn your Connected Leader certificate so that you could become a member of the Connected Leader Club. And you could learn all about myself, Michelle Tillis-Letterman, and get a chance to really understand the power of being a connected leader. ConnectedLeaderClub.com. That's where you can find us.
Love it. And I tell you what, you can't be those two names, Diamond and Letterman.
Yes. Well, of course.
I mean, come on.
That and Diamond and Phillips today would be that would be a real big infield.
Oh, that's so funny. No, this is fabulous. Random side note. I was joking with my wife when our son was born. Because again, I love sports names. Yeah. Like really cool sports names. So I came up with this name to name him Wakefield Phillips. And I always had in my head like Wake Phillips up to bat. I'm like, Wake Phillips. That'd be cool. His name is not Wakefield, by the way. So I lost that.
What is his name? What did you come up with?
It's Braden.
Well, Braden's a pretty good name too.
It's a good name. It's a good name. But we were coming up with some cool sports names. But I lost.
The problem I have isn't so much, coming up with sports name, is that coming up with female names for my thing goes down an entirely different avenue with the last name Diamond. That's all I can say. I'll leave it at that.
Very true. I love it. Well, Lou, I can't thank you enough for taking the time today. Just truly appreciate it. So glad we're connected. And please, everyone listening, go check out the show notes. We'll have links to the Connected Leader course, to that membership, to all the social media channels, things like that. Please connect with Lou, connect with the team, and make sure that you are taking advantage of the opportunities to get coached, be connected with different leaders in and outside of your organization. So Lou, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt. Truly an honor.
Thank you for joining us today on the Matt Phillips Podcast. If you are like us, we know that you are here to do great things, to become the sales leader that makes things happen and drives big time sales results. We know you have that big vision, and we are here to help get you where you want to go. We're here to help you develop that unstoppable, rock solid leadership skill set and help you train to master the one true differentiator: mental toughness. We would love to be part of your journey. So if you are ready, head over to mattphillipscoaching.com and check out the ways that we can help. As always, please share this episode and make sure you subscribe by clicking the button below. Thank you again. And now, go crush the day.